Welcome to another Learning Day with Glossika. Hi, 大家好，我叫诺亚，我来自美国。我中文已经学10年了。我目前在台湾读中医系。那我正在准备考取那个台湾的中医师证照。Hello everyone, I'm Noah and I'll be your teacher today. I've been learning Mandarin for about 10 years now. And today I'm going to give you guys a few tips and tricks that will have you on track to learning a new language quickly. So what started was I actually took a trip to Hong Kong to meet up with my sister who was living there at the time teaching English. And while I was there, I noticed all of these Chinese characters around, which I had never seen before. And I was really curious about what these meant, because in English we just use letters for all of our writing. And then in Chinese there's all of these different characters. So I asked my sister, well, what do these mean? Is there pronunciation? Do they have meaning? What's the history? And she told me that, well, she didn't know. She thought that at the time learning Cantonese was too difficult. So then I asked her more about that, and I decided that, I wanted to prove to her that I could learn this language as well. So I went back to America and asked if I could start learning Cantonese. My department at my university told me, we're sorry, we don't have this class, but we have a Mandarin Chinese class you could consider taking. So that was what got me started on this journey to learning Mandarin Chinese. What I found when I started learning the language is everyone will have different reasons for learning. So it's really important to set your goal right at the beginning. Maybe you're learning a language for an upcoming trip or something, or maybe you have the goal of becoming professionally fluent in the language. So your goal with learning a language will actually help determine your study methods, which I think that's why it's important to dive a little deeper to understand the motivations and how they can affect the learning process. This is what was especially important for me when I started learning too. With Chinese, there are many different challenges that a new learner of Chinese will find. Most of the common challenges are related to maybe the characters, especially for an English speaker. In English, there's 26 letters, and then in Chinese, you have thousands of characters. So if you're a new learner, it actually looks pretty intimidating when you see all of this. It's like, how could I ever learn this, right? So besides the characters, that's not all, right? There's the tones. There's 4 tones. That's something that's especially difficult for new learners of Mandarin Chinese, because there's 4 tones, ma, 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 ma. And if you get these tones wrong when you're speaking, people will not understand you, which was something very surprising for me as an English speaker. If I say what, everyone will understand that I said what. But if I say ma, that means your mom, and ma means horse. And if you get those wrong, you might offend someone potentially. So when we started learning, our teacher taught us a word like 喜欢, which means to like. So I was in class, I was like, oh, I can say that. So I just say 喜欢. My teacher said, that's not right. And I'm thinking, of course it's right. I said 喜欢, right? He's like, nope, it's 喜欢. Like, yeah, that's what I said, 喜欢. So as you can see from that, that is something very difficult with Chinese, trying to get this pronunciation system down. And it's something that can really demotivate a lot of people too. They think, maybe I'll never be able to learn this language. And I just like to say that that's not true. It will come in time. As you are practicing this language and practicing this new type of pronunciation, your brain will slowly start absorbing it and understand better how to pronounce this. And within no time at all, you'll find that you're actually saying these words properly, which is what I found too after maybe studying for even less than a year. After just a few months, I noticed some of those basic words like 喜欢, I was actually pronouncing these and my teacher was understanding me. I think a really good tip for a beginner is to have a good motivation and understand why you're wanting to learn this language, because that will affect how well you will progress on the learning process. I'll give an example. When I was a student in my first year college class, a lot of people in that class were in it because the school had a requirement to study a language. So they took this language as kind of like, this is something I need to pass. It's a class. I just need that grade. And obviously you need to pass your classes, right? That's not a terrible motivation. However, I still think it's not the best motivation if you're trying to become fluent in a language. So first of all, the school language curriculums, they're focusing on memorizing information for a test. And so if you're just preparing for these tests, then that's not necessarily preparing you for an actual environment when you're speaking with native speakers, or maybe your friends that also speak Chinese. When I studied at the college, we spent most of our time memorizing vocabulary and preparing for fill-in-the-blank exams, which honestly, a fill-in-the-blank test won't really help you learn a language. I think a better way is to find opportunities to improve your speaking and listening ability and starting to really use the language to communicate and think. I think my advice would be, if you're starting to learn Chinese, start right away. Start speaking right away. Any opportunity you can. Even if you're in your class and you learn a word like 吃饭, which means to eat, you can use that right away. And I know some people will say, well, I can't because I don't live in Taiwan or I don't live somewhere, and they're with Chinese speakers. And I'd like to say, it doesn't matter. You can still use it with your friends who don't speak Chinese. You can go out to the cafeteria at your school in your country and you can still say 吃饭, because that's what you're doing, you're eating. And the people around you will be interested and like, oh, you're learning Chinese? That's awesome. We want to learn Chinese too. And that's what I did all the time when I was first learning. And yeah, I didn't have like Chinese friends, but I was still improving and practicing with the environment I was given. So when I first started learning Mandarin, a very difficult part for me was learning the grammar. And it seems very counterintuitive for a lot of learners because one of the common ideas is that Mandarin grammar is easy. And that's because Mandarin doesn't have tense, which means when you want to talk about the past or the future, you don't have to change a verb like you have to do in English, which obviously is something very difficult for learners of English too. And so when you learn Mandarin, it's like, oh, it's just the same verb for everything. You don't need to actually have these changes here. It's a lot easier. But actually, that's something I found to be very difficult because if there's no tense in the language, then you still need to find a way to talk about the past. And if you don't know how to do that, then you're not going to be able to fully express what you're trying to say to a native speaker of Mandarin. So, which is why I found the grammar to be extremely difficult, because I wanted to learn how to say these things. I had to learn about something called particles that you add to the different parts of the sentence. And these particles are how you express if actions haven't started yet, an action has been completed. And for me, that was a completely different way of understanding how a language works and how to express meaning. So for instance, in Chinese, there's a very common particle called le that you usually use to determine if an action has been completed or not. I think it took me maybe 3 years of learning Mandarin before I really understood intuitively what le was and how I could actually use it fluently in a sentence. I know it seems that 3 years is a very long time, but this is what I'm saying is don't lose motivation over that fact. Learning Chinese is a long journey, and it's okay that these things take time. Don't let it bother you. For me, I learned le, and I didn't know what it meant at the beginning. I knew what the textbook said of like, oh, le means an action has been completed, but I still couldn't really use it in a sentence, and that was okay. I just tried to use it over and over in time and had friends or teachers correct me when I was wrong, and eventually my brain started to pick up intuitively what was actually going on and how to use this properly. So all it took was time, and I was willing to give myself that time to learn and not be demotivated over the fact that it would take time. So I hit a learning plateau for Mandarin after studying for about 3 years. And at that time, I was living in Taiwan. And I'd been studying for 3 years previously. So at that time, going from a beginner to an intermediate level, obviously I was improving every day. There was just so much to learn when you start from zero. And then after a few years, I got to a point where I was still putting in the time to study every day and also speak with my friends. And I just didn't see how I was improving. I just wasn't improving at that point. And honestly, at that time, I was really upset with myself. I was thinking, well, why am I not improving? I improved so much before. I might be doing something wrong. I started doing some research, and I did learn that there is this idea of an intermediate plateau, which is saying that you're going up to this point, and then you get to a point where you just kind of stop. And it told you, don't worry, this happens to everyone. You just need to keep practicing, and eventually you'll get over that plateau. And even though you don't feel like you're improving every day, you're still improving. So I took that to heart, And at that time, I decided I needed some new motivation for studying Mandarin. So I joined the Frisbee team in Tainan, and I was playing Frisbee with all locals. And I realized when I started playing with them that I knew how to play Frisbee, but I had no idea what they were talking about, which obviously was very intimidating, but it was a very good thing for me because it was a level of Chinese that I had never experienced before. So I'd just like to say before I go, I know I talked a lot today about not giving up when you hit certain stumbles or hardships in your language learning journey. But also I think something that's very important is that as you're learning Mandarin, enjoy the process, and that will help you learn better. One thing one of my first Chinese teachers told me was 感兴趣是最好的老师, which means that being interested in something and having this passion for it is the best teacher you can have. My recommendation for any aspiring Mandarin learner or anyone already learning Mandarin out there is, be interested in it, be passionate about it, and then you can do anything. So good luck, and I hope to have the opportunity to speak Mandarin with you someday. Goodbye.